Hey y'all, thank you for joining me on another video. Happy Wednesday. As I said in my previous video, I'm going to start doing my best to post videos twice a week now, Sundays and Wednesdays. Um, so here's to the new adventure and hopefully bring more awareness to domestic violence and narcissistic abuse. Y'all, excuse my voice. I have a cold and it's driving me crazy and it's making me stuffy as anything. So please just bear with me and my voice. Today I want to talk about All I've Ever Known. It's a song actually by the music artist Alexandra Kay. Um, I listen to her songs on repeat right now. They really touch my heart. She evidently has gone through similar things that I did. Not as long, because she's considerably younger. But she's touring with Jelly Roll right now. She's an independent artist, financing everything herself. And right now she is touring with Jelly Roll. So as she makes a stop in your area, I highly recommend her. I wish she was stopping in my area because I would definitely go see her. She wrote a song called All I've Ever Known. And some of the words that it are, and all I've ever known is fit the mold, play the role, be a good wife, wash your clothes, turn this house into a home. And all I've ever known is put your needs before my own. As I lie in bed alone, am I missing you or all I've ever known? Y'all, I went through that when I first left my ex, when I first had him removed. I started, I went through missing him and missing the good times. Um, and wondering what the heck's going on. And it was tempting, wishing that he was back there, wishing that it didn't have to be the way it was. And that's part of, I'm convinced, that's part of why uh, victims go back to their abusers, because they're holding on to what they think they had um, before the bad times, not realizing that the bad times is what's reality. The good times were a mask. And that line, am I missing you or all I've ever known? And that really struck me, especially when I heard this song for the first time. I'd already gone through a few years of therapy, several years actually, because I just recently heard it this year. Um, and that really struck me because it's like what I was missing was what I thought I had. I thought I had the knight in shining armor because he surely acted like it. I thought I was missing the individual that, on a slow Saturday afternoon would put in an old time musical like Singing in the Rain or Music Man and sit on the couch and snuggle up and watch it because I love the old time musicals, the dancing and the singing with Gene Kelly, Debbie Reynolds, Shirley Jones, all of those old musicals. I love them. And so he would randomly put one in on an afternoon we were both off work or something, and we'd watch it, and that I was holding on to times like that through a lot of therapy and many, 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 many tears. I realized that none of that was real. I mean, it legitimately happened. It wasn't a figment of my imagination. But what it was a form of manipulation because he wasn't into musicals. He didn't care about them, which that in itself fine. But he used it as a way of reeling me back in. Like if we were going through a really tough time where we were fighting all the time, or I was starting to complain about how we fight all the time, he would do things like that, and that would mess with my mind. Like, well, if he's doing that, there's got to be something there. And like I've talked about before, where excuse me, I'm drinking orange juice too to try to help me out. But he would do things like that, or randomly I'd come home from work and he'd have dinner cooked and playing one of our songs. That wasn't because he wanted to show love. It was because he wanted to make himself look good. Because if he truly loved me, he wouldn't have abused me. You don't abuse someone or something that you love. And it took a long time for me to really grasp that reality. It's part of the cognitive dissonance because you, in your mind, you're seeing one reality and in reality there's something totally different. And so you're like, which is real? And that's hard to grasp. Um, it's all part of what they want to do. They're very sinister. Um, because I would literally see him doing something and he would say, I didn't do that. Um, but I saw you. I just sat there and watched you. You may have thought you saw me, but I didn't. And the same with hearing something. To this day, I question my judgment on a lot of things. I gotta really. It sounds funny, but I literally have conversations with myself when I have to make a bigger decision. I talk it through to myself as if I'm talking to a friend. Okay, so this makes sense because this, and I do this and this, and because I don't trust my own judgment. I've gotten better, but it's still hard. So when a victim starts missing their abuser, they're not missing the abuse, they're not missing the abuser. They're missing what they thought the abuser was, what the abuser had them convinced that they were. Y'all, as I've stated in several of my past videos, what he had me convinced he was a knight in shining armor, rode up on a white horse, you know, here to save the day, because that's what I was looking for back then, because I was going through so much. So many people let me down, so many people that were supposed to be there to protect me. And so here is this individual here to protect me and wanting to make sure I'm safe and always there for me. I could literally tell him anything, talk about anything, and he would just sit there and listen, to only use it against me in later years. Um, I talked about my insecurities with him, and oh boy, the last few years especially, he used that against me big time. Um, some things that he said I will not ever repeat on videos because I try to keep things at least PG, because in case a child comes upon it. So some of these things I could never say on video because it's definitely not good. Just all I can say is use your wildest imagination, and it's probably worse. Um, what I knew him as was someone who would do the little things. And like I said, we women love the little things. He would put in a musical video that I had. I had several musical DVDs. I had Singing in the Rain, um, Music Man, Xanadu. um, and he would just randomly put that in. Or something he did when we were first married. I've talked about how when we were first married, he got his paychecks on Friday. Back when you got an actual check and had to go to the bank or to the grocery store and get it cashed. So he would get his check, go to the grocery store across the street from where we lived, cash it, and come back with one long stem rose. Uh, that was an I love you rose. And so that got known as my Friday rose. I got it every single paycheck Friday. And then that was when we lived in Chicago, well, outside of Chicago. When we moved back to New Orleans after I was pregnant, that stopped. I realize now that it stopped because he had me. He not only was he married to me, I was pregnant with his child, so he knew he had me hooked. So he didn't have to try as hard. And every so often, over the 3 decades we were married, he would randomly get me a rose on a Friday to remind me of how we are deep down. And side note to that, I thought it was always ironic that when he started doing that randomly over the decades, it wasn't even a real long stem rose anymore. It was an artificial rose. About as artificial as our marriage was, as the love he claimed to have for me. Not to take away from someone who does that for their partner because they do love them, but they can only afford an artificial rose. That's not to take away from that. He just did it because it was cheap and it was a way of keeping me on the hook. And he would do that. One time he did it. We belonged to this cult of a church, that we were going on a conference to. There was a conference for this organization in Dallas, and we were going there, and we were on our way there. We were driving the van with a bunch of other uh, single women in the church. In the, well, I don't even like to call it a church, but in the organization. we stopped at a gas station to get gas, and he comes out with a rose. And he shows me, and he's like, "What day is it?" And I'm like, "Oh, Friday." And of course, I started getting teary eyed because to me, that was like he was trying to rekindle an old flame type thing. And of course, the single girls were like, they were in their early 20s. They just swooned. And they're like, "Oh, he needs to teach some of these single brothers. Oh, can he have a class?" And I realized now that's why he did it, to make himself look so good and so sweet. Because I explained to them the story of the Friday Rose, and they're like, "Oh, I mean, that's what women like generally." And so, um, but it was always he. I look back now and I realize he did those things as a means of getting attention. Um, because he always did it in a way that others noticed. He never did it over the years in a way that it was just us. And I mean, I realize that now, and that's part of all I've ever known. Because when he would do stuff like that, it's like, this is the man I know. This is the man I married. When truth is, yeah, that's the man I married, but that wasn't what he was. That was just a very good facade. And unfortunately, that's how it is with a lot of abuse victims. They hold on to what they thought they started dating and moved in with or married, when in reality, they got together with somebody totally different that was just putting up a dang good mask. And you lose your identity. I lost mine. I'm still working on, as my previous therapist called it, Penny 2.0. I think now I'm on Penny 3.0 because I'm still evolving, I'm still changing and trying to find myself. Um, I think I've come into my own for the most part in finding out who I am. Um, Definitely not perfect, but it's been a long, hard battle to find out who I am, because when you're in an abusive relationship like I was in, and like so many others have been in, you lose your sense of self. All you've ever known is, like this song says, wash your clothes, cook your dinner, wash your dishes. Everything I did revolved around him. And sadly, though it did revolve around my kids, but not as much. And that is something I regret, because he had me so topsy turvy. He had me believing that he should come first before the kids. And though your spouse should come first, but not at the expense of the kids, there is a very, very, very fine line. Now I'm to the point where my kids come first. Yeah, they're all grown, but they're still my kids. And that if I were to ever meet anybody, they'd have to understand that yeah, I will love them, I will do for them, I will serve them, you know, but ultimately my kids. And I would do for him. Anything I did, I considered him. How would he feel? Part of it was because I wanted to please him at first, because I felt I'm a people pleaser by nature. Um, but part of it over the, after a while was what's going to get me to less grief. Um, I'm still learning how to communicate with others of what I want to do because with him I couldn't communicate because every idea I had, he would always shoot down. So it got to the point to where it was easier to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. Um, More often than not, I got way less grief if I did something and he happened to find out about it. I was like, well, yeah, because I did it this and this way. This is what I was thinking. And more often than not, he said, well, yeah, I could see that. Okay. Um, Rather than if I ask, hey, what about this or this? Are you kidding me? What makes you think that? Do you really want to do that? And he'd come up with some out of the box reason why that was a bad idea. Um, so that's why you also see a lot of abuse survivors second guess themselves because I still do that to an occasion. On occasion, I will sit there if I'm making a big decision. I will literally talk it through like I'm talking to someone. Say, okay, I want to do this and I want to do that because of this, and if I do this, then this or this. And I literally talk it through to myself because I don't trust myself still. I've gotten better through a lot of therapy, but it's hard because all you've ever known is what you thought you started dating or marrying. Um, that's what you hold on to because it's hard to face reality that they're that evil. It is hard to grasp the evilness of narcissistic abuse. Narcissistic abuse is, it'll have your mind doing topsy turvy things to where you look at the moon and wonder if it's the sun. I mean, I'm not really exaggerating that much. So when a victim leaves their abuser, they start remembering all the good times in what they've known. And that is part of why they go back because they think, oh, well, obviously there was something there if we did this and this. If I go back and I change and I do this, it could bring all that back. At the same time, they also go back because that's all they've ever known. That's their identity. Their identity is in that person. I am so and so's spouse. I am so and so's girlfriend, fiance, whatever the label is. Um, that's their identity because that was my identity for years and years. I was my kid's mom and his wife. And it's taken 4 years of therapy to have my own identity. Um, on the 21st of this month will be 4 years that I've been divorced. And I feel like I am my own person. It took a long time to get to that point. So when you see a victim being nostalgic about what they thought they had, try to realize that they haven't come to the full realization that what they thought they had, they never did. It was just a mask. Thank y'all. Have a great week. And see you Sunday. Be blessed. Bye.